Chris here, and welcome to my channel, and welcome to this week's reading vlog. It's that time again. It's the Final Book Support Group time, and boy, do I have quite the hefty TBR. Let's see if I can hold this up. So there's a lot of books in it, but I do have some ebooks. The problem is that, as you'll see, a couple of them are quite heavy. These two are heavy. So this is part of my TBR, because like I said, I have, I think, 2 ebooks, and my mom is currently reading one of the books. So this is even bigger than it appears right now. But these 3 should be fast reads, because like these are graphic novels, and that's a really easy middle grade. And then I do have a Seanan McGuire on here, so I'm hoping it goes really, really quick. Oof, I almost just dumped that all over the floor, which would have made me very unhappy. So we're going to set this back down. So that is some of the stuff I'm looking at. I also, if I have time, would like to get to the 3 books that were in my poll pick that didn't win. So we'll see if I can get to those. And then I'm adding a book to my TBR because I was going to read it anyways, and the timing works out. And that is, who was Martin Luther King Jr.? Today is Martin Luther King Jr. Day. So I was going to read this for Martin Luther King Day, and it just so happens to be the first day of the Final Book Support Group. And it is part of a series. It is part of the Who HQ series, which I count as a series. I don't necessarily plan to read every book in the Who HQ series. However, I do own a bunch of them, so I'm kind of keeping track of the books that I own and am counting those as the series, and I will continue to dive into whatever books sound interesting, and this is one of the ones I had, and I think it is perfectly appropriate to read this on Martin Luther King Jr. Day, so that is what I will be doing later today. I'm currently in the midst of 2 books. The first is The Color of Revenge, which is the 4th and possibly final book, or at least most recent book in the Inkworld series. I'm 20 pages in. I read these 20 pages like 2 weeks ago and just haven't picked it back up. Not sure why, it just hasn't happened. And then I'm doing my reread of Mistborn. So if this is the first vlog you're watching of mine, I read Mistborn in 2019, gave it like 2 stars, and it put me into the worst reading slump I've ever been in my entire life. However, I had only been back into reading for like maybe 6 months at that point. And prior to that, I had been reading tons of fan fiction because I liked being in the familiar world of fan fiction just with twists. And it was just easy because I already knew the characters. I already knew a lot of the relationships. I knew the magic system if I was reading a fantasy. I was just familiar enough with the world that it didn't require a lot of brain power to read fan fiction. Not that there aren't complicated fan fictions out there. It's just usually the hard part is learning the world, a magic system, the characters, that kind of thing. And fan fiction was my go-to while I was in college because I read so much for school that I didn't really read for pleasure at that point. And prior to starting school, I wasn't really reading fantasy. I had dabbled a little bit. I had read the series that shall not be named. So obviously I was aware of magic. I had read the Twilight Saga, so I had gotten some there as well. And I had even touched upon it in some cozies. So I had like the Antimity series, which features the ability for the main character to communicate with the other side via a journal. I had definitely read a few other cozy fantasies, and I had read some Nora Roberts, and some of hers have some light fantasy elements to them. So I was more on the lighter side or middle grade side of fantasy and had never really read an adult fantasy novel before. This was my first, and I was not ready for it. I've seen people say that if you're just getting into adult fantasy, this is where you should start. But I had read so little fantasy in general that I just was not ready for something that was like this. And I can tell you, given that I'm on page 442, I believe, yes. No, 443, that this feels like a high 3, low 4, based on my reread. So you can see how much my reading tastes have changed since 2019. So I will probably continue to read this. I've been reading 21 pages a day, and honestly, yesterday I plowed through 100 pages in one sitting and didn't have to. So it is definitely really, really hooking me, and I could possibly also finish this week. So those are my plans. I have so much reading I need to do, and just a lot of series to get through. So we're going to see how this goes and how many of the bingo board prompts I can actually hit in 1 week, and I'm going to try, we're going to see, I'm going to try to check in every single day this week and see how that goes. So it is currently 2:27 a.m. on the 20th, and I will probably see you around this time again tomorrow. So we'll see if I actually remember to check in on the 21st. It may actually be in the afternoon, because that would probably be better than continuing to film clips at 2:30 in the morning. That being said, I'm tired. I want to go curl up and read a little bit before bed, so I will check back in with you tomorrow and give you an update on what I read today. So it's Tuesday and I'm actually checking in. I remembered to check in, which is astonishing to me. And I already have a pretty hefty stack of books here, so I'm actually really glad that I did. So first up, I read Who Was Martin Luther King Jr. yesterday on Martin Luther King Jr. Day. I gave this 4 stars. I thought it was an interesting introduction to this well-known figure. I think it's a good starting place for young middle graders. I think I would enjoy something that has a little bit more information, because I don't feel like it touched on anything that I wasn't at least slightly aware of. So I think I'm going to try to find a book about Martin Luther King that has more details, that is written for a more adult audience. I'm sure there are plenty of options out there, so at some point I will probably pick that up. But I think this is a good introduction and does a good job of giving you the basics on who he was, what he did, and what happened to him. Then I read The Lady's Guide to Petticoats and Piracy, and I gave this 4 stars. So I was reading this for Continuation Station, and this follows Felicity, who really wants to be a doctor, but we're living in a time period where women are definitely not allowed to study at school, let alone be physicians. She ends up finding out that one of her heroes, Dr. Alexander Platt, is looking for research assistants, and she's sure that is something she can do. The only problem is that he's in Germany getting ready for his marriage to Felicity's childhood friend, who she's had a falling out with. There is also the lack of money problem, and that ends up being solved when a mysterious woman offers to pay her way to Germany as long as she can go in disguise as Felicity's maid. And despite the unsettling feeling that gives her, Felicity agrees because she wants to go to Germany so bad. However, her feelings change once she finds out this mysterious woman's true intentions. So we, like I said, follow Felicity. And we obviously met her in the first book, and I really enjoy her character. I had a fun time reading about her journey. She is definitely the type of woman that wants to buck the mold. I thought it was interesting seeing her relationship with Johanna, that is the childhood friend, and learning more about what happened there and seeing how each of them viewed what happened between them. I did not like these characters in this journey as much as I did Monty's book, which was book 1, but I did still have a fun time with it. I think there is a lot to enjoy about these books. We definitely go on an adventure in this one, and Felicity is a really fun character to be with. I just didn't grow attached to her maybe the same way I did Monty, but I do enjoy her journey, and I'm very curious to see where book 3 goes and how that plays in and who exactly we're following and what happens there. So still very invested in the series, still had a fun time with this. I just don't think I enjoyed it as much as book 1. Then for different genre, I read Finn in the Time Traveling Pajamas, and I gave this 3.5 stars. This is a middle grade sci-fi, and in this one we're following Finn, who ends up with a pair of time traveling pajamas, and we see him and his friends traveling through time. This picks up, I believe, shortly after the events in book 1, so I don't want to say too much more, but This one had a lot of interesting things in it with the time travel aspect. I thought that made things quite intriguing. We do get to see a lot of different time periods, both in the past and in the future. And it is interesting to see how Finn and his friends handle being in each of those time periods. We get some intriguing reveals in this one, and I feel like it set up the last book really well. So in February, I do plan to finish out this trilogy. It is not my favorite series. I do not think I'm going to keep the first book. I currently have the first book on my middle grade shelves. It's over there. You can't see it because it's Michael Buckley, and his name starts with B, so he's way over there. But it is on my shelves, but I think I'm going to unhaul it because I can't see this being a series I've reread now that I've read book 2. But I do think that it is worth passing on to one of the little ones, so at some point they will probably get it for one of the various holidays I give them presents for. So I still think this is a decent middle grade sci-fi series, and I am curious to see how things work out in book 3 because this definitely set it up really well, and I'm invested in where it's going. Then I read both volume 6 and 7 of Lore Olympus. I was reading volume 6 for graphic novel, manga, comic, novella, and I was reading volume 7 for special edition because I have the Barnes & Noble exclusive edition, and I gave both of these 4.25 stars. This series is a Hades and Persephone retelling, and I've really, really enjoyed it. I'm still enjoying the journey these characters on. A lot of interesting things happen in both of these that I feel like really moves the plot along. This ends on a cliffhanger, so I cannot wait for book 8. Although this one, if memory serves, did as well. So I think I'm glad that I have both of these, but I definitely would like volume 8. And I still absolutely adore the art style and how colorful the art is in these books. Like, it's just so pretty. And that definitely keeps me engaged. I'm very curious to see where things are going because some very intriguing things happen, especially in this one, that make me curious about how this is all going to get straightened out. There's also been a thread that we see some development on in, I believe, book 7, and I'm curious to see where that continues to go. So still very much invested in the series and very much enjoying it. Then I finished The Bookstore Cat, and I gave this 4 stars. This is a cute little children's picture book that follows a bookstore cat, and it's literally set up so that you're getting like the alphabet. It says it is inspired by a Victorian parlor game that the author played with their family when they were a child. The Minister's Cat. In that game, a cat is described using adjectives in alphabetical order. Players sit in a circle and establish a clapping rhythm, and the first player describes the Minister's Cat with an adjective that begins with A, and the next player will do the same. So we get like each letter of the alphabet and a word to describe the cat, and I just think it is a cute little book that has some emphasis on each letter of the alphabet, which will definitely help, I think, with reading and sounding things out and starting to learn the way certain letters sound and look on the page. I had fun with this. I definitely could see me getting a copy for one of the little ones, and it was just a cute read to kind of break up some of the heavier books I'm reading right now. And speaking of heavier books, I have one more update, and that's that I've started The Towers of Midnight. So this was not a part of my original plan, but my audiobook came in, and the longer I have to listen to it, the less pages I have to read each day, if that makes sense. So I actually got to page 120, and I'm curious. There, again, as things are wrapping up, I can't really talk about what's going on because Robert Jordan intended the final 3 books to be one book, and when he died, Brandon Sanderson took over, and after a conversation, I believe he said in the note he put in book 12 that he, after talking it over with Jordan's wife, decided to split it into 3 books. So this is part 2 of Jordan's original final book. So I've already read book 12. This is book 13, and then I will have book 14. So I don't want to say much, but it is all kind of wrapping up, and some things just went down and were said that make me very, very not happy. So we'll see where this goes. So that is my final book support group so far. I'm smashing it because I'm getting through quite a lot of books. I mean, granted, there were some graphic novels, and one of them was a middle grade, and one of them was a picture book, but it's still a lot of reading. I also have gotten my kitty cat, and nope, this way, my puppy. I have some Valentine's Day Build-A-Bears that I got, and I think they're very, very cute. Also, you can see next to the kitty cat, I have a red panda who is also really, really cute. And I do have a Santa panda, but he is in the hallway, and I'm not going to get up and get him right now. I will try to remember to bring him over and show him off at some point during this vlog. I'll bring them over too at some point, but they have found some space on my bookshelf, and they're really cute, and I'm feeling a little bit festive. So that has been my Final Book support group so far. I am smashing it. I'm not planning on checking in again until Thursday, because with Dynamite tomorrow, I know it's going to be tricky, and it is currently 10 o'clock at night on Tuesday. So I feel like Thursday is a good time to check in, give myself Wednesday off. So I will check back in with you Thursday. And again, this could be Thursday at like 2 in the morning, depending on how I'm feeling. But at some point on Thursday, I will check in and give you another update on how I'm doing on my TBR. It's like 1:45 in the morning on Friday. So I did not check in Thursday, and I'd already said I wasn't going to check in Wednesday, but basically I used today as a kind of self-care day because I was not feeling too hot. I have had just a really rough January, and I'm trying to stay present, and I'm trying to stay engaged and not fall behind on things, but it's been very, very hard because all I want to do is kind of curl up and dive into a book. And she wanted to say hello. And it's made things tricky because, well, that makes it hard to film, edit, upload. But I did film phase 10. So considering there's spoilers for that's going to have to go out before this. So that'll be interesting. I think I can manage that. And I really wanted to get that done because I wanted to finish building my February TBR so I could figure out if I was going to partake in any readathons in February. And then that was pretty kind to me, so I ended up saying yes. We'll see how that goes. Because I think right now, I did move one of my books that I had hoped to get to in January to February because it works really well for Polarathon. And while I'm reading a lot, I just don't think I'm going to get to every book that I hope to get to in January. So I thought it was smart to move that one over since it would work well. And then I'm pretty sure I'm going to do the Get a Clue readathon. So we'll see how that goes. I still haven't decided whether I'm going to do the junior detective or the senior detective. With the senior detective, you have to fulfill prompts. With the junior detective, it just matters how many pages you read. And I can definitely contribute to a team in that sense. So we'll see how I'm feeling in a couple of days, and I will make a final decision on that. But that's not what you're here for. You're here to hear how I'm doing on my Final Book support group TBR. So I finished The Secret Rescuers, and I gave this 4 stars. I was reading this for illustrated cover, and this was just a really cute addition to the series. This series tends to follow younger kids who are trying to protect magical animals because the leaders of the lands where they live are singling them out and wanting to kind of get rid of them. In this one, we see Talia, who lives near a forest that is full of firebirds and ends up meeting a baby firebird named Riki, and soon realizes that Riki and the other Firebirds are in danger and has to try to help them. I've just had a really fun time with these. These are just really cute, really quick, fast, easy middle grades. They have illustrations, and I just think this is a fun little series. This fits with all of the others while still tying into the bigger story. And I definitely enjoy when this comes out of my TBR jar because it's just a fun, easy read to add to my TBR. And I definitely think it's good for that early middle grade range. Then I read Villains in Venice, and I gave this 3.25 stars. So this is the third book in the Taylor and Rose Secret Agent series. So in this one, Sophie and Lil have a lot going on. There seems to be a spy at the Bureau, and there's a mission that needs to happen. So Lil stays behind in London while Sophie goes to Venice on said mission. And I think there were a couple of issues I have, some of which are the book's fault and the way it was written that didn't click with me. And the other two are more of a me thing. So I'm going to go with the me thing first. First off, I think I waited a little too long between books because I had to spend time trying to remember what was going on. The second part of that is that I only had access to the audiobook. My library does not have a ebook copy or an audiobook copy. And because it had been so long, so there were characters mentioned, and I was confusing characters because I wasn't physically reading along. So there would be points where I would be like, wait a minute, that character isn't supposed to be there. What are they doing there? And then I would realize that I was thinking of a completely different character when that character would then be mentioned later. And I did this with multiple characters, and especially considering it was set in two different locations, I would sometimes forget where the location was and who I was supposed to be following. And that is a me thing. But that also factors into the thing I didn't like about it, and was the fact that I like seeing Lil and Sophie together, and because Sophie was in Venice and Lil was in London, it missed some of that charm that I like about the series. So this is a series I would really love to reread at some point because it is a spin-off of the Sinclair's mystery series. And I would love to read all 8 books in a very short period of time just to see how I feel about the story as a whole. So that may be something that I look to do either towards the end of this year or the beginning of next year. I think that might be a good idea. And would give me time to, collect the books. Although, if I get them this year, well, no, because I've already read the books. And I'm saying that I have to read everything I purchase, assuming I haven't already read it. So I think I would be okay there. I was like, wait a minute, I would have to read them because I haven't read them, but I've read them. I'm very tired. My brain is very fried and frazzled. So I think that might be the key, because I am going to be listening to Nightfall in New York this week, which is the 4th book in the series. So hopefully the character thing won't be as bad, because that should be a little bit fresher in my mind. But I definitely think this is worth a reread at some point, because I do think that the rating is partially at least due to the fact that I only had the audiobook copy and the timing of when I listened to it, both in reference to when I listened to book 2 and just the general state of my brain right now. So I'm going to try really hard to focus when I listen to book 4, and we'll see how that goes. But I do think this is a really good mystery series, and that's why I'm kind of prefacing it. I am giving it 3.25 stars, but that might be more of a me thing than a book thing. So don't judge this book if you've enjoyed other books in either series by my rating on this one. And then the last book I finished is Danger at Dead Man's Pass, and I was reading this for Pulpic, and I gave this 3.5 stars. This follows Hal, who goes on adventures on trains with his uncle. And in this one, he and his uncle Nat end up getting this message from a baron who they have connections to from various places, but mainly a train journey that they took in a previous book. And there was a death in his family, and it's being attributed to a curse, and he would like Hal and Nat to go undercover, pretending to be relatives of theirs, to see if they can't suss out what really happened. And the mystery of this book wasn't bad, because I did enjoy it. My problem is that most of the story was told at this family's estate and not on a train. And some of the fun part of this series is the idea that it all takes place on the train. And so it was missing a lot of the things I liked about that part of it. I also was a little frustrated because I feel like I didn't necessarily love how Nat behaved in this one and the way that kind of played out. Although I did really enjoy some of the characters that Hal got to meet in this one, and I enjoyed the vibe he had with them. So I didn't dislike it by any stretch of the imagination, and I very much would like to continue this series sooner rather than later because I was reminded why I like these mysteries. And I also love, we use this. So we get, like, see, he draws the family tree. Hal loves to draw and uses drawings to help illustrate and get some of his thoughts down. And I love the way those add to the story. I just felt like this was missing something by not being on a train. And it's not like it diminished the mystery at all. It was missing some of the charm that I really like about this series. So 3.5 stars. I believe this would be my least favorite in the series, but I still had a good time with it. Then I'm currently in the midst of 2 books. This first one is not on my Final Book Support Group TBR. I am reading Towers of Midnight, and they really need to fix the dust jacket on this one from the library. This is book 13 in the Wheel of Time series, and I have made it to page 230. I'm very proud of that. I am so ready to be done with this series. I went through the slog. Book 12 was probably my favorite book in the series, and this book has definitely got some things that are very, very interesting, which is why I keep reading, well, just one more chapter because I need to know how that one wrapped up. So it's doing a good job of keeping me engaged. I'm ready to be done. I want to know how this wraps up now. And I still have like 600 pages of this book, plus however many pages are in book 14 to finally wrap up this series. So we're going to keep plugging away at this week because I think I needed to read like an hour of audio at the speed I'm listening to it at to get it done by the end of the month. So that's what we're going to continue to do. Although, like I said, I do keep listening to little bits more than originally planned. So we'll see how this goes. But I did want to let you know that I was reading this. And then for, I believe, book I'm reading for fun, I'm reading A Pirate's Life for Tea, which is the second book in the Tomes and Tea series. And I'm on page 114. And we're following Kianth and Reyna. Yes. And they're continuing something that happened at the end of book 1. So it would be spoilers, so I don't really want to tell you what they're doing. But they're continuing that thing that happens at the end of book 1. And they end up joining up with Bobby, who is a constable, and are helping them try to track down a pirate for reasons relating to the thing they're doing. I'm enjoying this. I forgot how much I enjoyed book 1. I was a little nervous because it started off a little differently than I was expecting. But I am now sucked back into this. I am very invested. And it's a little weird because we are getting POVs from Bobby and the pirate. And that's a little different. So it's unexpected. I wasn't expecting to be in other characters' heads. And if I was expecting those to be the focus and it to be kind of set in the same world and Kianth and Reyna not be characters we follow. But we're getting all 4 POVs, and I think that's kind of interesting. I'm, like I said, definitely invested in this story, and I'm really glad that I ended up putting it on this month's TBR. So that is my update. I have officially checked off self-care because, like I said, today I just did not feel up to filming. I am struggling. I went from the beginning of the month with the wrestling hangover from watching wrestling at ridiculous o'clock in the morning time here, but proper time in Japan, which kind of screwed up my sleep schedule, to just starting to bounce back from that, only to go into grief week because I had the 3-month anniversary of Liam's death and then the 1-year anniversary of my Graham's death, only to go into the inauguration and to be told that I don't exist. And that's rough. It has been definitely wreaking havoc on my mental health. I'm depressed. I am struggling to remind myself that I'm loved, that I am valid, that my feelings about the whole situation are valid, and that it does not matter what they say. I know who I am, and they can't take that away from me, regardless of what kind of laws they would like to pass. So it has been a very, very rough week, and I've much preferred to be buried in a book. I think tomorrow I'm going to film my 5 on Friday for the 24th and the 31st. And I say tomorrow like, I mean, tomorrow is the 24th. Hopefully you get what I'm saying. Again, tired brain, not working very well. I'm going to film those, and then I'm going to do sprints because I think I need my community. I need you guys because you always make me feel better and make me feel seen and valid and heard and wanted and valued. in a way that I'm not feeling right now. So I think that's my plan. I think that will make me feel so much better. So that is the plan. And while doing that, I'm also going to try to wrap up all of these books because I'm trying to remember, I have what I'm reading for fun, my final book in Nightfall in New York, and then Anticipated, which was like a curse. Oh, and new release. It's in my bed. I forgot because it's in my bed because I'm going to read that tonight. Adrift and Current, Clean and Clear. So I have a lot to read. However, I have 3 more days to finish this vlog, and I only have 4 books, one of which I'm partway through, and at the rate I'm reading, this should be a piece of cake. I have officially read, where is it? What was the last book I finished? Villains in Venice. Villains in Venice was the 40th book I've read so far in 2025. I'm worried that I may hit 50 books in January, which is extremely high standards. However, I have a 3.75 average rating right now, which means as many books as I am reading, I'm not finding ones that I'm loving, which is rough. So yeah, we're gonna see how everything goes. And hopefully I've got some higher ratings coming my way because I would expect this to get at least 4 stars. And I would guess that Like a Curse and Adrift and Current, Clean and Clear have a good shot at 5 stars. Because I gave the book before this 5 stars, and I've given books in the Wayward Children series 5 stars. So we're going to see how that goes. And yeah, hopefully when I update you tomorrow or Saturday or whenever I have some more books done, and maybe I'll have found my first 5 star of 2025. Made it to Saturday, and I have a nice little update. I finished 2 books today, well, today being Friday, and the first was Adrift in Currents, Clean and Clear, and I gave this 4.5 stars. So this follows Nadia, and we have met her in other books in the series, and we get to see the world that she went to. If you don't know, Wayward Children is a Portal series, and kids who are in our world find doors that lead them to worlds that suit them better. Sometimes they get spit back out of those doors and end up back in our world, where they go to Eleanor West's Home for Wayward Children. I think that's what it's called. And so some of the books are set in our world, and we get to see what it's like for people who have come back through doors. And in other ones, we get to see life in these other worlds after they have traveled. And like I said, in this one, we get to see Nadia's story. We have met Nadia in other books, and I had a lot of fun with this one. I really, really loved seeing her journey. I would love to do a reread at some point because I was trying to remember all of the details that we knew about Nadia that we had picked up throughout the series. And I just think it's going to be so much fun when I do a reread to then be able to end it with this book and kind of see what I've put together. Sorry if the camera angle changed. Cielo is on the desk and bumped the camera. I really enjoyed this. The only reason it doesn't get 5 stars is because I thought the ending kind of came out of nowhere and felt like really quick. I just wanted that little bit more from it to kind of wrap things up and explain things. I think if I had gotten that, it would have gotten 5 stars, but it didn't, so 4.5 feels fair, and I just had a fun time with this. Then the other book I finished is A Pirate's Life for Tea, and I gave this 4.25 stars. This was another one I had a lot of fun with. I loved being back with these characters. I loved the adventure they were on. I thought the new POVs we had in this one were intriguing. I preferred one to the other, but I did still enjoy it. In the epilogue, I think we got teased for potential new POVs for book 3, and I'm very intrigued with where that may end up. This was just another fun read. It is very engaging. I will say, this is one of the things that I mentioned when I read Can't Spell Treason Without Tea. That if you were going into this expecting it to have the same kind of vibes as Legends and Lattes, it doesn't. It is much more fantasy based, and there is definitely in this one much higher stakes than in the... Once again, I apologize if anything has changed. This time she dumped the camera on the floor. Anyways, I believe I was saying that it has a lot more high stakes than Legends and Lattes, and there's a lot more going on, and I think we saw that increase in this one. So I think I enjoyed this one more than the first one because I went into it with completely different expectations, and I wasn't expecting it to be low stakes like Legends and Lattes, and I wasn't expecting it to be as cozy as Legends and Lattes. I was expecting it to have slightly higher stakes. I mean, it is in no way an epic fantasy, but it is definitely higher stakes than something like Legends and Lattes. So I'm still very much enjoying this series, and I definitely look forward to the third book, which I believe is called See You at the Altar. That's coming out later this year. Also, you can see my bookmark is still in here, and that's because at the back, you get the epilogue, it finishes, and then it says, The Game, a Tomes and Tea one-shot. Note, this is a spicy one-shot, not suitable for underage readers. It has no bearing on future books or their plot. It's just a fun time. So I thought it was really, really cool that, one, they included that for somebody who might like spicier romances and spicy scenes, but they did it in such a way that people who don't enjoy that didn't have to read it. It wasn't part of the book, and they made it clear that it is not needed for you to enjoy the series, the story, or anything. It was just a fun little one-shot that they wrote because they felt like it. So I thought that was really cool how they kind of incorporated that, because I know a lot of people really do love their spicy romances. And so I think it's really awesome that they get this spicy romance little one-shot for their enjoyment. But those of us who don't need to read it, and it was made very clear that we don't need to read it. Like, we don't lose anything by not reading it. So I just wanted to mention that for those of you who are reading the series. And then the other update I have is that I have started Like a Curse, and I'm on page 162. And I had to force myself to put this down. So this is the second book in this series, and we're back with Ramya. And in the first one, she learned all about magic, and that there were mythical creatures like sirens and vampires and fae. And she learned this after her grandfather died, and she was left this journal where she's supposed to record all of these different magical creatures. And I am loving being back with Ramya. She has dyspraxia, which is a, how does McNichol put it? It is a developmental coordination disorder. That is the formal name for it. It affects motor skills and processing. And so we get to see how that also plays out. And I love that we have a neurodivergent main character. And I will say, I don't think this is going to get 5 stars. There were instances of the way Ramya is behaving in the beginning of this book that I didn't enjoy. And so I don't think I'm going to end up giving it 5 stars. But I think it's going to get 4.5. I'm really invested in the different things we're learning about the magical side of this world. I am still loving the relationships that she is building, both building upon the ones from the first book and new relationships that she's starting to develop in the second one. So very much enjoying my read of this, and I'm very happy to have added it to this TBR. So that's my update. I think tonight I'm going to try to finish that. I might listen to a little bit of Nightfall in New York, and assuming I want to put an audiobook down and I finished Like a Curse, I've decided I'm going to pick up Mr. Limoncello's Fantabulous finale, because this feels like, of the 3 books that were on the poll that didn't win, this is the one that is calling to me the most right now. So we'll see how that goes. I think there is still a shot I actually get through at least 2 of those, because I think today I'm going to finish Like a Curse most likely before bed. And then I have Nightfall in New York as an audiobook, and I have The Bookshop on the Shore, which I have started. I don't think I've mentioned that at all in this vlog, but I have started it. I just don't have the physical copy, so I completely forgot. But I have started that, which would leave me with needing physical books, and the only physical books I have left, because I've read all the rest of my TBR, would be the other ones in my poll pick. So we'll see how much of that I can get to. I may also, like I said, sprinkle in some Tower of Midnight. I may pick up Mistborn again at some point. We'll see. I know I'm planning on sprinting all day Saturday. Well, not all day. I'm planning on sprinting for like 5 hours-ish, 4.5 hours on Saturday, and then pretty much all of Sunday. So we'll see how this goes. And yeah, I will check back in with you at some point tomorrow and give you another update. officially Monday, which means it's time to wrap this vlog up. I did not end up checking in yesterday, mainly because I just forgot. I thought about it a couple of times, like how I needed to do it, and then I just never did it, completely slipped my mind. And I realized it shortly after I started sprints today that I had never checked in, so oops. So this is me here ready to wrap things up. I had a lot of fun this round, so let's run you through what I managed to do in the last little bit of the readathon. So I read Nightfall in New York, and I gave this 4 stars. This is the 4th and final book in the Taylor and Rose Secret Agent series. And I also read book 3 during this vlog. So I believe I said that the reasons that one didn't get as high a rating was because it had been too long between me reading book 2 and 3 and trying to keep everybody straight, especially given that I only had the audiobooks, which was a me thing. And then Lil and Sophie being separated and me missing the group dynamics and the friendship dynamics that I usually find in the other books. And this one didn't have that. I mean, it did because I still only had the audiobook. However, because all of our characters were together in this one, it meant that I didn't have as hard of a time following where we were and who we were with and whose POV we were in. And that definitely helped. Obviously, the story was fresh in my mind, so that helped. And I enjoyed the story of this one more. I had fun seeing how everything wrapped up. I really like how things came together. I do still think that this is a series I would like to give a reread at some point. I have added the books to my bookshop wishlist, except for the one that bookshop doesn't have, which is now on my Amazon wishlist because I'm trying to not use Amazon as much. So at some point I will hopefully be able to get those. So we'll see, but I had fun with this last one, and I really enjoyed the journey the characters went on, and like I said, how it wrapped up. It felt very right, how things ended up wrapping up in the end, and how this 8-book long, over 2 series story finally came to its conclusion. So very much enjoyed this, and had a fun time with it, and like I said, would like to reread in the future. Then I finished Like a Curse, and I gave this 4.75 stars. So, like I was saying in the previous clip where I started this, I felt this wasn't going to get 5 stars, and I was right. Basically, in the start of this one, I don't like the way that Ramya is behaving and a bit of her attitude, and so I had to dock it a little bit. Otherwise, I absolutely adored this. This does feel like a duology. It feels like the story completely wrapped up, so I have moved it to my finished section on my spreadsheet. I really enjoyed, for the most part, this story. Like I said, there was that little issue with Ramya's attitude in the beginning, but I think it did play into the overall story and how we got from point A to point B. So it makes sense in the context of the book. It just rubbed me a little bit wrong. I really enjoyed the mythical beings we got to see in this one. We got to meet a few new ones, and I thought they were really interesting. I think Ramya really grew as a person in this one. We got to see a lot of growth out of her. I felt like there was something I figured out before Ramya did, but I don't think that took away from my enjoyment because I still didn't know all of the pieces and how everything kind of fit together, and I really enjoyed getting to see Ramya find out about that. All in all, I just love the series. Love Elle McNichol as a writer, and love that she is bringing more neurodivergent rep to the forefront and having her main characters, who are these badasses, show that they're being neurodivergent does not hold them back in any way, shape, or form. And I think we need more of that, because I think it is important for kids who are neurodivergent, even if they don't have dyspraxia like Ramya, to see that being neurodivergent doesn't mean that you can't be amazing. So absolutely love this series and cannot wait to read more by Elle McNichol. Then I read Mr. Lemoncello's Fantabulous Finale, and I gave this 4 stars. So we're back with Kyle in this one. We had, I think in book 5, a completely different POV, and I didn't love not being with Kyle. But in this one, we're back with Kyle, and he's got a titanium ticket, and he's getting ready to go into a competition with a bunch of other people who have titanium tickets or are trying to earn one. And the winner of that final competition is going to be able to take over for Mr. Lemoncello someday and inherit his vast gaming fortune. And of course, Kyle wants to be that person. This was a lot of fun. So I love all of the puzzles that we get to see in this one. I like that we also get to see things from other competitors' POVs, because I think that adds a lot to the story. and we kind of get to understand who Kyle is competing against and what their motivations are. There were a lot of really fun characters introduced in this one, and I just had so much fun being along for the ride. I think the ending was perfect. It is exactly what I think the ending should be. This is another one where the ending feels really complete and like it ended in the way I would have wanted it to end. So I don't feel like I'm missing anything, and I don't feel like I've lost anything by having finished the series, or that there are like loose ends that I wish had been tied up. So I was very happy with that, and I just had fun with this. I like the series. I think it's a very intriguing series. It very much encourages reading and books, and I think another thing that is really important is doing that. So had fun with this, and I would recommend this if you are into middle grade mysteries or you have a little one in your life that likes middle grade mysteries, because these are really, really fun books. And there are puzzles in there that you can solve along with the characters, which is always fun. And then the last book I finished is the last book on my Final Book Support Group TBR, The Bookshop on the Shore. This was a TBR vet because I started this series, I want to say in 2019. I ended up giving this one 3.75 stars. This follows Zoe, who is living in London and struggling to kind of make ends meet. She has, I think, a 4-year-old son named Hari, and his dad visits but doesn't really contribute financially. And Hari's aunt comes through with a job for Zoe, but it takes her to the banks of Loch Ness. She ends up working at this bookstore, which is the bookstore we saw from the first book. And to cover like housing and stuff, she is become the au pair to 3 children who have lost their mother. She gets there and finds out that the kids are struggling. They have been kicked out of school. Their father is a mess. And like I said, their mom has left them. So they are not in great shape. She isn't necessarily doing great either, given all of the circumstances that have led her there. And also, I should mention, her son does not speak. And so she's been worried about him because she's been told he will speak when he's ready to speak. And so she's hoping that this new location will benefit both her and her son. I was lucky enough to be told by Omi to check the trigger warnings on Storygraph before reading this. And I would highly recommend, before you go into this book, absolutely 100% check the trigger warnings on Storygraph, because they are completely accurate. And this is a book that has a lot of things that could be very triggering. It is not a light and fluffy contemporary or contemporary romance by any stretch of the imagination. So I don't want you to go into it thinking that it is. I really enjoyed the relationship that Zoe developed between herself and the kids that she's taking care of. I enjoyed getting to see the relationship develop between Hari and these kids, and how that started to change Hari and help kind of bring him out of his shell a little bit. I wasn't as in love with the bookstore part, and I didn't necessarily like the character's dad. I questioned some of the decisions he made throughout this book, and that brought my rating down some, but I did enjoy, like I said, the aspect between Zoe, the kids, and her son, because I think that was my favorite part of the book. And I think if we had spent more time kind of focused on that, I would have enjoyed it more. It was the other stuff that was going on that I didn't love as much. But I had a lot of fun with this book, and I am glad I ended up picking it up, though it is not one I could ever see myself rereading. And so I'm glad that last year I didn't end up buying it, because it was definitely in my cart on Book Outlet at one point, and I ended up taking it out to get something else. And I'm glad I went with whatever else it was I got, because, like I said, this isn't something I could see myself rereading. So I enjoyed it, and I have now made more progress in a series. I finished my Final Book Support Group TBR, so I'm pretty happy with that. And again, thank you to Omi for warning me about the trigger warnings and allowing me to also warn you guys about the trigger warnings, and to let you know that Storygraph's trigger warnings are extremely accurate to what you will find in this book. So I have made some progress in a few others, though. I started Witchwood. I read the first chapter, which puts me on page 16, so I don't have much to say, but I did start it. And then I have gotten to page 334 in Towers of Midnight. So I'm making good progress in that chunker as well. The other thing I thought I'd mention, because this was fun, I was on Sprints today, and I was debating which of the other 2 books I had left from my poll pick, because I had Danger Dead Man's Past, which won. I read Mr. Limoncello's Fantabulous Finale, and I had these 2 left. And I went, I'm more in the mood for this one than this one, so I'm going to start with this one. And I read the first paragraph and went, this is book 2, isn't it? I don't know why I thought Secret of the Reaping was book 3, but it's not. It's book 2. And I looked. Rise of the Wrecking Crew is book 3, and I have it listed in my spreadsheet. And I don't know how I ended up with this one. And from what I can tell, my library does not even have access to book 3. So I don't know when I'm going to be able to read book 3 for this one, because I feel like they did it at one point, so I don't know what happened to it. So I'm going to have to do some research, because this isn't a series I can see myself rereading, so I don't know that I want to buy book 3 so that I can read it. So we're going to see. Like I said, I'm going to have to do some research on that. Like maybe I can get the audiobook or an ebook or something from my library, because I haven't checked. Well, 1, the digital catalog, but 2, the digital catalog through like the New York Public Library. And I don't believe Hoopla shows up when I look online, so we'll see. But I'm going to have to figure out how to finish the series, because this is not book 3. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. So I'm going to try to hold up the stack of books I've read this week. Keep in mind that I also read Nightfall in New York and Villains in Venice, which were audiobooks, so I don't have a physical copy of them. I think that was the only books I read digitally. They completely digitally, so we're going to hold up the stack. I don't know how long I'll be able to hold it up, but these are all of the books outside of those 2 audiobooks that I read in the past week. Oh my goodness. So I read Danger Dead Man's Past for poll pick, A Pirate's Life for tea for read for fun, Like a Curse for highly anticipated, The Baby Firebird for illustrated, Adrift in Currents Clean and Clear for new release. The Bookshop on the Shore was TBR Vet. The Lady's Guide to Petticoats and Piracy, I believe, was Continuation Station. Finn in the Time Traveling Pajamas was different genre. Lore Olympus Volume 6 was graphic novel, manga, or comic. And Lore Olympus Volume 7 was book box book. And then I was reading Villains in Venice for 2024 TBR, and Nightfall in New York was final book. And also on that stack of books that you saw me finish, I read Bookstore or Bookshop? Bookstore Cat, The Bookstore Cat, and Who Was Martin Luther King Jr., because I wanted to read them. So, oh, and I forgot to put on my stack, Mr. Limoncello's Fantabulous Finale. So I read 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. I read 15 books this past week, which seems to be par for the course. And let's see. A Pirate's Life for Tea caught me up. Like a Curse finished a series. Adrift in Currents Clean and Clear caught me up. Lore Olympus Volume 7 caught me up. Nightfall in New York finished a series. And Mr. Limoncello's Fantabulous Finale finished a series. So I would say I had a very successful round of the Final Book Support Group. And I am very happy to have taken part once again. Thank you to Steph for hosting. I adore this project you have created, and it definitely makes me focus on my series. So I am very, very happy with the progress I made this week. So thank you again to Steph for giving me a little bit of inspiration to help me pick out some books. Did you partake in the Final Book Support Group? If so, let me know how you did in the comment section below. All of my social media is linked in the description below if you'd like to come chat with me. If you've made it this far in the video, leave me lemon emojis. Like this video and subscribe to my channel, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye!